How's it going? This is Resident of Collarwood for YouTube, back with another read along of To Be Night and Beguile. Book 5, Chapter 7, Watch Your Back. A morning winter sun stunned through the window of Gabriel's nursery. See what happens when you slip up? The warmth of the morning light felt good on the baby's skin after a very cold winter night. It seemed never ending. The baby didn't sleep well. He felt uneasy as he slept and kept feeling a strange presence in his room the whole night until the sun came up over the horizon and waking him with a cranky disposition. Obviously, the 9-month old did not understand the ways of the strange new world he was a part of. The only thing he knew was voice, the calm voice of his mother, Evie, who entered the room from an adjoining bedroom. I sort of wonder, because the baby being deaf, I sort of wonder if I know he's only 9 months old. The baby's sort of in a weird way learning to read the lip movements of his mother. Um, when kids lose hearing or sight, when somebody loses hearing or sight, you often hear that they pick their other senses really home very early on. That's something I read once. So I'm wondering that here. She had come to his room several times over the night to check on him, catching him awake several of those times and rocked him back to sleep. Sure, he was ill, but of course it was something else, something much more abstract to the mortal world and the naked eye. When Evie entered for the final time this morning, dressed in a long, flowing lavender nightgown and a tan colored knit sweater that held in her body warmth, she felt fit and uneasy feeling in the room that came with a chill up her spine. She chalked it up her own lack of sleep, dealing with the awful dreams she'd been having and the strange sleepwalking events she had just endured. But there indeed was an uneasy energy in the room affecting both mother and child. It was ghost like sensation that Evie couldn't see, but she could smell. There was a fragrance in the room, a light, fresh citrus smell that she had smelled before, but she couldn't remember where she had smelled it. She peeked in Gabriel's crib at the baby, although exhausted from a rough night, looked up at his mother and giggled with glee when he recognized her loving face. "We need to figure out this sleep pattern of yours," Evie said. She picked up her baby, and a rush of sadness came over her, suddenly remembering her mother, Rora's recent tragedy of losing the child she was carrying. Being a new mother herself, Evie now felt an even bigger hole in her heart for her own mother's tragedy. There was nothing more powerful than a mother's love, and she felt it being so loved by Aurora, and now she could feel, it being Aurora's friend. "We have a lot to be thankful for, little boy," she said to her son, "but we have a lot to mourn too," she added, thinking about the mourning black she and the baby would wear in respect for Aurora's loss. Evie, Nicholas said, peeking through the baby's room. "Good morning." He came in. "Hi, come in, come in," she said to her brother. "How's my little nephew?" he asked, walking over and easily taking the baby into his arms and kissing his plump little cheek. "Restless. He and I didn't have a very good night's sleep. You know, little Gabriel kind of looks like you," she said. "Really?" Nick asked proudly, especially when he's grumpy, the big sister teased. "Well, I didn't sleep well either, little chap," Nick said to Gabriel, who couldn't keep his little hands off Nick's chiseled face. "I couldn't stop thinking about Mummy. I wanted to go see her at Gregory's, but he said that she's having a hard time seeing anyone," Nick explained. "Go anyway," Evie said sternly. She's our mother, and you're a doctor. She should see you. Nick nodded his head in agreement, but before he could respond, Jane entered the room and curtsied. And his hearing? Evie, Nick, ever since the doctor asked, still having trouble. Evie frowned. Dr. Ward has tried everything, but nothing has had helped. I'm beginning to lose hope. Don't, Evie, Nick replied, turning quite seriously. You're the only person on this earth who had gone through what you've gone through and always come out on the other side beaming. It's your hope, baby. It's our beacon, our family, mother. Me, Gabriel, we need our hopeful beacon now more than ever. Evie's eyes welled up with tears. Then she touched her young brother's face, her heart filled with admiration for him. Miss Lord, a voice came from the door, breaking the touching Jordan family moment. There's someone here to see you. So early in the morning? Who? Nick asked Jane. Miss Jacqueline Gray, Jane replied. What in the world? Evie replied, her emotions all over the place, but happy her new friend was here, was there. Were you expecting her so early? Nick asked, sort of confused by Evie's schoolgirl-like happiness at her friend's arrival. No, but I'd love company for breakfast. Les has been a bit distant lately, and you're always at the hospital, and well, we know what Mommy has been through. It's good to have someone around, Evie explained. Nick's brows lifted. He could understand if Evie felt a little lonely, and the only other company she could have is with two 14-year-old children, Charlotte and Morgan, and she probably would want a bit more adult conversation. You've been seeing this Miss Gray quite often, haven't you? I think I saw her in passing once, Nick asked. Here and there, yes, she's really a godsend. Sometimes this house can be the most beautiful prison ever made, and having someone from the outside world really puts in a better mind space, Evie replied. Better mind space? It's not just you and Gabriel who's been having trouble sleeping. It's been, I don't know, weeks of bad dreams and sometimes insomnia. It's been really horrible, Evie explained. Listen, I know that the baby's hearing situation has been really stressful, and I can imagine it torments you, so please never feel like you can't come to me about anything. Jacqueline is a friend, but I'm family. You can lean on me too, not just this new friend that came out of nowhere, Nick replied, squeezing his sister's free hand. Evie smiled, and even a tear came to her eye. When she first moved from London to Welshport, she was even lonelier then, especially after Sebastian's first supposed death. But having her brother, then her mother, follow her on the move across the pond had been an answered prayer. Nick's little bit of jealousy was cute. Their big sister little brother relationship has always been as strong as iron. She's not replacing you, Evie said with a half smile. She's just doing what friends do. She's helping me, and we keep each other company. I know, but I worry you're not just anyone you know. You're worth millions now, you and this little boy. Jacqueline is a stranger. Just be careful, Nick said. Please, I'm fine, Evie replied stubbornly. Fine, Nick replied with pretend little brother annoyance. I'm glad your new friend is filling my void so easily. Jacqueline again entered. Miss Jane entered. Jane again interjected, still waiting for her order from Evie. Thank you, Jane. My brother is pretending he's not happy to rid of me now. That's I found a new friend. Jane grinned. Evie continued, please let her into the library. I'm just going to dress and go down, Evie said as Jane scurried off. I'll see if I can see Mummy today, Nick added before Evie left. Evie took a breath. Give her my love and tell her I'll come to see her later. I will. See you later, Evie said to Nick as she kissed baby Gabriel on the forehead and took him from Nick's arms. See you. A short time later, Evie walked into the library with Jane and baby Gabriel. Jacqueline was standing near a large bookshelf with books that went up to the ceiling. She flicked through a page on Leonardo da Vinci. Her eyes scanned the old pages with a smile, prints of Leonardo's work. She passed her hand over the photos as she could feel the warm color of the Mona Lisa smile lift off the page and into her hand. It's really gorgeous, isn't it? When I was 16, my father took our family to Paris and I got to see her in real life. She was so small in person, her little smile is almost invisible if you don't look long enough, Evie said of the painting on the page as she to ba- handed it the baby handed the baby to Jane. I'll bring him to the breakfast room, Jane said. He's getting so big, Jacqueline said as she walked over to Evie. Evie smiled and agreed. Gabriel was very much growing fast, and hopefully, with this growing little frame, he'd also gained some hearing back. Do you really think so? Jacqueline wondered, knowing full well that that was not possible. I hope so. Dr. Ward said that sometimes babies have these medical abnormalities, and they pass as they grow just as quickly and mysteriously as they arrived. Maybe this is one of those things. Jacqueline took a deep breath and hugged her new friend tightly. I'll pray that happens, she said. While on Jacqueline's hug, Evie suddenly smiled, the same scent of Jacqueline that she found in Gabriel's room. It was impossible for it to be different. It was just as strong, as intense as it was on her skin as it was lingering in Gabriel's room. Your perfume, what is that? Asked Evie asked, pulling out of the hug. It's called Narcissus Nor, a perfume I found in a boutique in Boston many years ago. I wear it every day. Evie stood there confused and a bit alarmed. Why would such a distinct scent, a perfume she had realized that she had smelled it on Jacqueline before, but never questioned it because she hadn't smelled it in her baby's room before. Why was Jacqueline secretly in the baby's room? How long had she been there? You wouldn't have been in Gabriel's room before I came down here, were you? Evie asked point blank. Jacqueline's eyebrows lifted. Why, no, of course not. Why do you ask? It's just that Evie paused. Just what? Jacqueline pushed. I smelled your perfume in his room a little bit ago, just as I went to check on him. I know that it's your perfume because it's not very hard to miss. It's a beautiful scent, but I would have liked you to have asked if you could see Gabriel before just going in there. Evie said, No, no, Evie, I wasn't in his room. Jacqueline said, lying. Just she had been there in the night, and throughout the morning she was the reason the baby could not sleep. Jacqueline watched the baby sleep. She picked him up and she rocked him. She snuggled with him. She fantasized that this child, Sebastian child, was her, that the baby was her baby with the man she loved. She had come so many nights and been there with Gabriel, and she had watched him sleep so often, and now she was caught. I definitely smelled your perfume there, Jacqueline, Evie said, not persuaded by her new friend's words. The witch was cornered. Evie, read about I read about what's going on here with you in the paper. That gossip column, this Baxter Murphy, that's his name. He's been somehow briefed on your situation and how you've been sort of slipping back into some kind of, I don't know, mental breakdown. That's really why I'm here, Jacqueline said, finally telling some form of the truth. What do you mean? How does Baxter have information about me? What was in the paper? Evie said quickly, crossing her arms over her chest in frustration. Well, it said that you've been played to a very different, disturbing dreams that may be putting you back in some resurgence that you haven't been yourself. The rumors that you're mental break is worse than the first one he mentioned. You spent time in the sanitarium a while back called Wincliffe, Jack happily repeated. Baxter is paid by the company this family owns, and he knows better than to tell lies about us, but I guess he's not afraid. Why would he? The more gossip about any of us he has, the more papers sell and the more money the family makes. It's all a very vicious cycle that the Lords hate but love all at once. I'm in the hate column. If I were you, Jacqueline, as a friend, I wouldn't believe everything I read. He explained, hinting that what was happening in the house was not true when it was. Jacqueline knew full well Evie was having strange dreams that were tearing at her mentally. Jacqueline knew because she was the one causing them. Jacqueline had no idea how the media gained a word of Evie's misfortune, but she happily took hold of that information and was happy to rub it in Evie's face to further push of her mental break, even it within Evie's own mind. She wanted Evie to feel more and more insecure. Clouded, disjointed, Jacqueline saw her that much a threat. She didn't want Sebastian to come along and take care of her. The two women in a toxic friendship that was clearly only toxic on one side, Jacqueline's side. For her part, Evie was quickly seeing that perhaps this new friend of hers, who seemed to have much in common with her, that it was felt too good to be true, perhaps it was. It was clear seeing the bit resentful side of Miss Jacqueline Gray. I wouldn't put a single bit of more energy into Baxter's column, Jacqueline said. I believe you, she added, with a very unconvincing tone of voice. Evie took a breath, her body eased, and her freshly clean dress of green and soft yellow that almost looked like a lighter shade of green. She pulled on Jacqueline's hand and led her to the sofa and picked up one of the art books she loved so much and flicked through the pages to show her an image of one of her favorite paintings called The Dream by Henry Rossosi. Look at this one. It's quite new, maybe 3 years old. I want to go back to Paris someday and see it in person. The colors are so beautiful. The dark greens of the forest are so perfect to help define the woman in the center. It almost makes me feel like it's me inside of Terramore, lost, vulnerable, Evie said, shrugging. It's called The Dream, Jacqueline said, noticing the strange coincidence of Phoebe's life imitating art. Ironic, isn't it? I've had a few more of those dreams, Baxter so kindly revealed to everyone, Evie said. Oh, what else has happened in them? Jacqueline said again, already knowing what Evie dreamt as she was the one who forced her to see it. Just more and more about Matthew. But this time there was someone calling to me. It sounded like Evie paused. Sounded like what? Jacqueline asked, anticipating her friend to reveal her love for Sebastian, proving what she feared most. Nothing. It doesn't matter. It's just a dream, Evie said, shutting down the conversation. Evie, tell me, do you think these dreams are really about Matthew calling to you, or maybe there's more to it? Do you think you have someone unresolved feelings, some unanswered questions about how things ended with Sebastian? Jacqueline asked, feigning concerned friendship. Evie closed the art book and folded it on her lap side down. She licked her lips and wondered for a second how to answer as the scent of Jacqueline's courtesy, fresh fragrance, danced and all around her headed her again, reminding her that Jacqueline was so interested now in Sebastian, but then those thoughts fluttered away. She wanted to have a good friend. She desperately needed someone that she could confide with now that was so practically on her own. Jacqueline, for all intents and purposes, was that person. Evie was only suspicious of her, but perhaps those suspicions were exaggerated and egged on by the fact that Evie had been having trouble sleeping. Evie's gut was weary of Jacqueline, but her mind was stronger and told her shrug these things off. She wasn't clear headed, thanks to the lack of sleep and clearly jumping to conclusions of someone that was innocent. I thought of that, yes, Evie said, surprising Jacqueline. Jacqueline's mouth went dry. Her heart skipped a beat when hearing this. Evie was also thinking of Sebastian now more than ever. Jacqueline realized just how much in danger her love affair was getting to, possible crumbling if the two were to reunite. So would it be strange for me to say that you still love him? Jacqueline said, again fake smiling the whole time. Amy thought for a moment about her love for Sebastian, her love for Matthew. The two were so different in her life, they represented a clear before and after in terms of the person she had become. But she did love Sebastian, she did love Matthew, and she knew one of them was certainly gone, the other had returned again. Could there be something there with him again? He wasn't sure, but Jacqueline was hungry to know. It was vital for her to use that information for her own gain. Evie, Jacqueline asked again, pushing for an answer. Evie got up and replaced the book of art on the nearest shelf, just under a large painting of Rebecca Lord as a young woman. Evie looked up at Rebecca and wondered how she would have answered if she were in her own position. Evie couldn't be more different from Rebecca, but she did admire her. She admired how strong Rebecca was. She admired the stories she learned of how Rebecca took control of her family's company when everything seemed to be falling apart after Albert's death. She's the one that took your baby, Jacqueline said, noticing her look at Rebecca. Evie snapped back around to Jacqueline, who Evie noticed kept interjecting with small negative asides, seeming to want to aggravate her. She wasn't in her right mind. She was being manipulated by a very cruel person, Evie said. I'm obviously glad she failed at what she wanted to do, but it wasn't her, not Rebecca. She loves her family, Evie added. She loves Sebastian too, no matter what. I'm guessing the answer to my first question is that you do, Evie, is still love Sebastian, Jacqueline, resolving in her suspicion. Evie went back to the sofa where Jacqueline had now stood up to face her so-called friend, a woman that had much history, a child, and love for the man she herself loved. They looked into each other's eyes and saw each other very different now. Evie saw Jacqueline as someone who was poking around her private life in a way she did not see as friendly. And Jacqueline saw her new friend the way she had predicted, a very dangerous threat to her connections to Sebastian. I think I should go back to the baby. Maybe we can meet another time, Evie said without answering Jacqueline directly. Jacqueline smiled again, a fake smile, and opened her arms to Evie to enter a hug. Evie at first hesitated, but went to hug Jacqueline goodbye anyway. This was a moment Jacqueline was saying goodbye to Evie, not in words, but in future actions. Evie's non-answer to her about her feelings for Sebastian was enough for Jacqueline to realize she cannot let Evie ruin her newfound happiness. For her part, Evie knew now that she had to watch her back. Evie knew she came off as a naive young mother to many, who was overwhelmed by the power and prestige of the Lord family and the strength they wielded over so much of the eastern seaboard. But Evie grew up in the cutthroat world of English duchesses, princesses, and ladyships, young heiresses that backstabbed each other at the drop of a hat, pushed into a new society circle that glittered far more than the one they were in. Jacqueline was poised to do what she wanted, to take Sebastian for herself, but Evie would not go lightly and would keep her eyes on the new friend of hers. That things had certainly changed in Evie's life since Jacqueline's arrival. That was something Evie was also noticing, and she was now growing suspicious of the things that were slowly floating to the surface. As Jacqueline left Terramore, she could sense the twinge of confidential tone in Evie's voice toward the end of their conversation. Jacqueline was caught off guard by the perhaps slip of hers, but she readied herself for any other conversations like this one. The witch's whole whose life and past wasn't as glittery as Evie's felt in her own right that her new friend was now dead to her in this social way, that social death could very well come true in real terms if Jacqueline had her way. She wanted Sebastian all to herself, no matter what she had to do to get her way, and Jacqueline Gray always got her way. Meanwhile, upstairs, Morgan Thorne, the 13-year-old son of Genevieve Thorne, who took off from Welshport early in the month to find David Lord, wandered the mansion looking at the paintings as if he were lost in a museum. His hazel eyes searched for clues on the faces of people in the paintings, for some kind of answer to who they were. He was a stranger in the house, and his mother left him with the family she herself barely knew. He felt abandoned and lonely, but Celeste had promised to watch over him until Genevieve's return. But the abandonment didn't sink any less living with the Lord family. Don't get in any trouble now, Jonathan Dewey said as he was entering the hall from his room. I'm not the boyfriend. Listen, I know it must be hard, Morgan not having your mother here, and barely knowing me, but it'll be okay. I would have really enjoyed being your stepfather had things worked out between your mother and I. But that doesn't mean we can't be friends, Jonathan said, reminiscing about his breakup with Morgan's mother. The boy said nothing in reply, and Jonathan patted Morgan on the shoulder and went on his way downstairs, leaving Morgan to continue his hallway roaming. As he continued on his path down the long red carpet hallway of the western wing of the mansion, he passed an open parlor door and peeked in, seeing Charlotte sitting at a card table with a long peach tone dress with her crossed her feet popping out from below her skirt. Her bright blonde hair seemed to glow in the sunlight as she stared down intensely on the stack of cards she was playing with. Morgan smiled ear to ear, seeing her. Of all the people in the house, she was obviously his favorite, being his pair. Hi, he said, bounding onto the parlor of the bundle of energy. Can I play? He asked, staring down at the card game. Charlotte smiled. She liked him too. She had been so lonely most of her life without siblings, even though Sebastian always treated her like his baby sister. Now she was an older sister to Fabian and a sister type to Gabriel, and perhaps even Morgan. It's not that kind of game, silly, she said, flipping the cards over. Morgan noticed the back of the cards. They were a shiny gold colored and had an eye with bright rays of light coming out from behind the eye, looking paintings of kings and queens and all sorts of strange characters holding swords and goblets and knives. That's an odd one, Morgan said, taking this card that had a large faced man sitting on a throne with a sideways crown. That's the Forgotten King. These are tarot cards. I found them in my grandmother's room, Charlotte said. What are tarot cards? He asked. Well, from what I remember, the cards that are sort of they use things. They send us messages when We read them, Charlotte explained as Morgan sat down next to her. Have they said anything to you? He asked, a bit bewildered. No, not really. I didn't ask them anything. I was just sort of fiddling with them. Morgan's lower lip pouted as he furrowed his brow, unsure of what she was saying. Do you believe that? He said. How can cards give us answers to our questions? And it's not the cards that tell us, it's the spirit world that the cards are connected to. And somehow, when we ask answers the cards, the image on the cards tell us a story, and that story should be the truth to what we're wondering about. You just don't understand, Charlotte replied very absurdly and sure of herself. After all, her psychic abilities had grown exponentially in the last few years. Okay. Maybe I don't. Let's try, and on me, and see what they say, Morgan said. Really? Charlotte asked, grinning at the young man she had grown fond of. Yes. Why should I be scared? Morgan joked. No, not unless you're chicken, she replied, slipping a strand of golden hair behind her ear. Go on, try. Charlotte shrugged and grabbed the deck of the tarot cards and stalked them first, then began to shuffle them in her hands with her eyes closed. Her mind was like a trap, and she forced hard on the cards in her hands that she shuffled over and over and over again like an old pro. To Morgan, it seemed like she had done this before many times. After a few minutes, she shifted the card table round that she and Morgan were now facing each other. She began to pick cards off the top four in the total and asked Morgan to pick four cards himself from the bottom. The cards were laid out on the table in rows of four, Charlotte's choices on top, Morgan's on bottom. They were they were eight golden eyes staring up at them when Charlotte asked Morgan to slowly pick just three cards and flip them over. But wait, she said, holding her arm out, blocking him. Before you flip them, focus on a question or on a situation you need help on or seek answers. Then flip the card. Morgan shook his head, closed his eyes for a few seconds, and focused on something in his mind. Mother, will she return? He thought. He opened his eyes, nodded, showing he was reading, and Charlotte removed her arm from blocking him, allowing to pick his card. He picked the second, the third, and the seventh. My turn, Charlotte said. I pick only one, and I will pick the fifth. Charlotte looked at the cards and tilted her head. She read them over and over so that the story they were telling would begin to make sense. She sighed with frustration when the story wasn't clear, at least to her, but then something on the fifth card, an inverted image, the hand holding the pentagram. Then she looked at Morgan's card, the second card, the queen, the third card, an inverted image of the knight, the seventh card, the magician. Well, he said. Charlotte lifted her eyes and her then light colored brow. The queen tells me a woman is in your question. She is the form of a queen because she rules your heart. I'm assuming your mother, the knight, is inverted, which represents a man that is concerned to the queen, yet disconnected to the queen. She knows him, but knows does not know him. The magician is a card that presents a third part, a person that is connected to both the queen and the knight, and this one that will bring them together, she replied. But see this card, the one I pulled? This connects to the magician. The magician may not have the queen in the knight's best interest. Wait, if the queen is my mother, does this mean someone is out to hurt her? You said her best interest, Morgan asked in worry. No, I maybe not. It's just cards, Charlotte said. But you said they were cards that told the truth. So do you believe? Morgan asked. Because my question was about my mother. You know that somehow. Charlotte sat back. She gulped, realizing she was right. She shook her head and scanned the cards on the table, mixing them up with the cards from the stack. It's not real, she said. You're lying. You think it's real. What's going to happen to my mother? She's so far away. She's out there somewhere looking for your uncle. Something is going to happen. Is your Uncle David the knight or the magician? Morgan wondered. Oh, look, let's pull out one card, just one, and see what it says. Refocus again on what you want to know. Then that card will be the definitive answer, Charlotte said, gathering cards, shuffling them, and placing the deck of the tarot cards on the table, the stack face down, with the golden eye staring up. I don't know, Morgan said, hesitating. It's okay, Charlotte said in a quiet whisper. Morgan took a deep breath, his heart sinking into his chest with worry for his mother Genevieve. There was so much at stake for out there alone searching for a man she didn't know, but was so drawn to. David Lord, a mysterious figure that may or may not be alive. Charlotte, too, worried in her own right, unsure of what the card would say to Morgan once he pulled it from the top of the deck. It may not even be bad. It may not even be bad. Morgan, it could be a misunderstanding. It'll be okay, she said. Morgan took a breath, closed his eye, and thought, is my mother in danger while she searches for David Lord? He pulled the card, a card of a man standing in the field of reeds holding 7 large things that to Morgan looked like sticks. What is it? Morgan asked, not recognizing the six. The 9-1, Charlotte said, her voice timid, and she slowly looked up from the table of the cards, 9-1 staring up at both of them, at seemingly innocent card, nothing on it showing danger, showing fear, showing any inkling of something to cause harm. But Charlotte was stoned, face chilled. Charlotte, tell me, Morgan said. It means to be wary of the world around you, to be careful, to be watchful that there are things that are around you. There is something in the air here, controlled by the forces of this card. It's watching, waiting, and willing to hurt. My mother hurt my mother, Morgan asked. Charlotte didn't say any word. I want to get out of here. I want to leave. I know she would have never left. What do I do? How do I get to her? I need to find her. I need to help her and leave this stupid house. Charlotte, what do I do? Morgan said, his body leaping up from the sofa where he was seated. It's okay. It's okay. Calm down. I know someone that can help, okay? We'll go to her. We'll find her and well, everything is going to be okay. I promise, Charlotte said, her new friend close, pulling her new friend close and hugging him. He tilted his head and laid it on her shoulder and cried. The fear of whatever was out there, Genevieve's life, of all of it, was in danger. Charlotte predicted it in the cards, and now Morgan felt the cold stare of danger on him and his mother like never before. Later that afternoon, Celeste paced her husband's office at the Lord Publishing House. She was wringing her white gloves in her hand nervously, awaiting Jacob's return. She was worried their plan of taking over the company and taking control this way was wrong. Evie was her friend for so many years, and their plot to commit Evie and become Gabriel's guardians so that they could be sure of his shares of his company fell into their hands would be exposed before it could even be put into motion. Jacob's confidence that Evie was truly losing her mind, much like his mother, was what she worried about most. Evie wasn't losing her mind, and Celeste knew that. Celeste's real motive was her own financial and social stability in the world where Lord Family ruled supreme, and this would forever solidify her own son Fabian in the future. She had taken all of Jacob's traits, hostile, controlling, and paranoia, and rolling them up into motherly hold and protection of her son. But the cost would be Evie's freedom and her son Gabriel's removal from her own custody. The optics were horrible, but Celeste was already in too deep. Jacob's entrance into the office startled Celeste, whose mind had drifted off into the plot at hand. Well, she asked, "Where is he?" Jacob lifted his hand up. "Relax, he's on his way." Jacob had called the family lawyer, who was based in Providence, Rhode Island, a young man who had himself inherited the family law firm. The young lawyer wasn't unfamiliar with Welshport and the Lord family, the slightest aside from being one of the firm's most profitable clients. He was also related by blood, as Jacob lit a cigarette and talked us out of canceling the whole thing. He secretly entered by opening the office door slightly and knocking on the side of the door, and she peeked through. "Mr. Lockwood is here, sir," she said, opening the food folly that the Lear Lockwood could enter. Lear was Rebecca Lord's nephew, son of her late brother Henry Lockwood and his wife Lorona. Lear was a young man of 35 with sandy blonde hair and eyes that were a strange warm green that never lost the sparkle of his youth. His two older siblings had moved from the East Coast to explain their law firm in different parts of the country, one in Chicago, the other in San Francisco, leaving her alone to deal with the day to day insanity that was their Aunt Rebecca's family. Jacob jumped from his desk with his cigarette tight in his lips. "Cousin Lear, damn, boy, you've grown up. Well, when Aunt Lorena told me in her letter that you've taken over Uncle Henry's business all these years ago, I stupidly never expected to see a grown man walk through my door. I guess I still see you as that kid I shoved in the bushes the winter when you came to visit for Christmas. Come in, come in." "Bushes?" Celeste asked. "They were thorn bushes. I was 5 and Jacob was 14. I still have the scars," Lear joked, shaking Jacob's hand. "Sounds very much like Jacob," Celeste answered, knowing her husband's cruel side. "Celeste, this is my cousin Lear Lockwood, Esquire. Cousins, this is my beautiful wife, Celeste de Vinny Lord." Celeste and Lear exchanged greetings, and Jacob ushered them both over to his large oak desk, where Lear began to pull his satchel, a slaw of documents for Jacob and Celeste to look over. "I filed the paperwork, and it should be all taken care of very shortly with the magistrate here in the village. I don't know how you did it, but we were assigned the judge you specifically requested," Lear explained. "Perfect," Jacob replied. "Lear, we need to be sure that Evie's medical care is taken into account and that this is all done under the most legal of ways. Gabriel's a special child, and taking him from his mother may be, well, it's traumatic for any child. I want to be sure we're doing the right thing," Celeste said, hearing your, herself sound concerned, but knowing she was doing this out of the selfish point of view. "Well, if Evie is still ill, as you say, I don't see how any judge would allow a child to remain in the custody of a parent in that condition." Jacob was able to get our medical records from Wintcliffe, and this is already a point in our favor, Lear said. "How?" Celeste asked, surprised Jacob had already done his homework. "I have my ways," he said. "Jacob, you know as well as I do she wasn't ill at that time, because Celeste began before being interrupted. "I know. You don't have to remind me of what happened the first time. But the records don't reflect the real reason she was there, now do they? All they reflect is she was there and what she was treated for, which is practically mirroring what she what is really happening this time, without me interfering, I may add. I haven't done a thing to her this time, Jacob asserted. Celeste, listen, we're too late for hesitation. This is going to happen, right, Lear? That is correct, Lear said, pulling out the already signed custody change forms. It just needs to be affirmed now by the state. Wait, I need a second, Celeste said, quickly standing up from her chair. Celeste, Jacob replied in her outburst, sit back down, please. Wait, what if we're wrong? What if she's not really going insane? Maybe we could talk to her about how to run the company. Maybe by the shares off of her and Gabriel, maybe we don't need to go this route. Celeste, again, it's too late, Jacob said. Even if you asked her to about the shares, they would be in control of it. And if she'd sell, there's no real way to know if she would. If she's in a frail state of mind, this is perhaps the best way to protect the company from whatever she might do with a mind that's ill, Lord Lear said. That is what's best, Jacob added. Just before Celeste could finish, Jonathan Deviney walked in. What's this, family meeting? I wasn't involved. Maybe my memo got lost in the shuffle papers the messengers in the office carry. Jonathan, this is a private family matter, Jacob said. I'm family, Jonathan shot back. Lear looked confused. This is my half brother, Jonathan Deviney, Jacob said as Jonathan again interrupted. Jonathan Deviney, Lord? Yes, Jacob said, rolling his eyes. Jonathan, this is my maternal cousin, Lear Lockwood, our family lawyer. I called him up from Providence for some important issues for me and Celeste. Jacob replied. How do you do? Lear replied, reaching up to shake Jonathan's hand. How do you do? I'm also Celeste's half brother. Our family tree is rather tangled, I'm afraid. We can fill you in later. So that makes me family on both sides. What's this all about? Jonathan said smugly. Lear again looked confused. We're discussing the future of the company and we're making sure our children are taken care of. That's all, Jake replied. Celeste gulped. I see. And what does this initial exactly is this talk about? It will, if so, I apologize for entering unannounced. Not actually, Lear said, pulling more papers out of his schedule, handing them to Jonathan to the wide nose of both Celeste and Jacob. We're discussing Evie's mental state and how much damage it could cause if she's allowed to control her shares of the company that she automatically inherited from Sebastian, from what Jacob and Celeste have testified to in some affidavits. Evie is not well. We're working on getting the magistrate for the sake of the company mitigated, sorry, for the sake of the company. Jonathan could see right through all this shabby legal talk. He looked up at Jacob Sliss, who were silent, caught with what seemed like quick maneuver in a company takeover. Well, this seems like a perfect storm of a takeover. I wasn't aware of Evie's illness. What is this illness? Jonathan said, using air quotes around the word illness. You know as well as we do, Jonathan, that Evie's been struggling. Just the other day, Jacob found her standing on the ledge of her bedroom balcony. She could have fallen to her death. What if she was holding Gabriel? That would have died. He would have died. You can't let something worse like that happen. This is Celeste pulled her conscious again, hitting her. It's what? Jonathan asked, knowing his sister wasn't this craving and seeing her in a new light. This is what is going to happen, she answered as Jacob smiled with pride. Jonathan couldn't believe her. He looked at her with disgust and shook his head. Jacob, knowing they needed Jonathan on their side if any of it was going to work, asked Lear to excuse the Lord so they could talk privately. Lear wasn't sure he should at first, but Jacob insisted. As Lear closed the office door, Jacob sat Jonathan down. We need you to understand something, Jonathan. This isn't just about Evie putting herself and her child in danger. There's something else. Les turned to her husband, unsure what he was going to say. What else could there be? Money seems to be the only thing any of you worry about, Jonathan shot back. It's not about money, it's about the stability of our company within the world of prying eyes. How would it look if our investors and clients, potentially clients who want to work for us, if they knew what was going on with our family? It's bad enough we're still dealing with damage control after what my mother did. We don't need more of that with Evie. But I like, but like I said, there's more. Celeste sat back, finally realizing what Jacob was going to say. Her heart sank. It was all coming out now. The other night, the intruder that was Gabriel in Gabriel's room at Terramore and attacked me, then then you. That wasn't any intruder, Jacob began, and Jonathan leaned in closer, eager to find out who it was. It was my nephew, Sebastian. Jonathan sat back. He smiled, thinking Jacob was like, Sebastian was dead. He knew it. He had heard all about it since the day he arrived at Washburn. What do you mean? How can it be Sebastian? Jonathan asked. Johnny, listen, Celestia, a ghost. Are the two of you trying to tell me that Sebastian's ghost was in the room? Or is he suddenly alive? Maybe it's Evie who's losing her mind. Many it Maybe it's Evie who's losing her mind. Many it Jonathan said with a patronizing smile. He's not alive. He's not dead. He's in the middle. He's one of those, they call it vampire, Jacob replied. Jonathan sat there stone faced and quickly burst into laughter. You're both insane, utterly insane. Committed. That's what I should do. I should have you both committed. I knew you had a wild imagination, Jacob, but that is too much. Johnny, Celeste said, breaking his heretical outburst. Her face was serious, not smiling, not breaking. She was dead serious, and he knew that this look before. It was a look on her face both times she had to inform him of their parents' death. It was a look she had there was something awful and heartbreaking came out in their lives. Her eyes teared up, her lower lip pulled in under her upper lip that twitched, holding back the tears. They were both about to burst from her eyes. Sebastian was alive, and he could tell it wasn't a miracle as it would be with anyone else. He was alive, and it wasn't a happy dream. You can't be serious, Jonathan said, letting his laughter cool. Serious like a heart attack, Jacob replied. But how? He asked, finally letting it all set in. We don't know exactly. But know you now the dangers that surround Evie constantly. Shauna lives in her mind somehow, but her child too has this creature in Sebastian from always there in the shadow. They're not what we need for this company. Not now, not ever. This is the only way what can ensure of our fortune. Evie will be taken away, and Gabriel will go under our care, Jacob said. For how long? Jonathan asked of Gabriel. Jacob didn't answer. He turned to Celeste and allowed her to reply. He wanted her footprints cemented in the plot. He wanted her voice to be heard so that it wasn't just him this time causing the rift in the family. He wanted, as she looked to Jacob, then looked to Jonathan, then Jacob too again. Forever, she said in a low voice. This is forever. Jonathan thought for a moment. His hands were sweating. His legs wouldn't stop shaking. He was worried about what it even meant to have some creature of the night lurking around Terramore and the island as a whole. He worried not only for himself, but for Morgan too. The boy he was left in charge for a while for his mother Genevieve was sat out in the world searching for David Lord. The fear of the awful confusion and worry would have eaten him up if he didn't swallow his heart there in his seat. He agreed to keep his mouth shut. He thought of the night Sebastian attacked him when he interrupted him and Jacob when he thought he was an intruder. He realized Sebastian was so strong he overpowered him and threw him across the room like a rag doll. It wasn't just an intruder, clearly now it was indeed some kind of supernatural being. Take care of it then, and let's bury this. Bury it and make sure it never hurts us again. Jacob nodded as Jonathan got up from his seat. Celeste reached out and grabbed his sister's hand and squeezed it. Then, after he left Celeste and Jacob in the office alone, Jacob came over to his wife. She stood up and he held her in his arms. It's done. A current of cold winter wind passed over the islands of Welshport and Good. The moon floated in a dark purple sky with stars that twinkled in the distance, only obscured by the glumping clouds coming in over the ocean as Sebastian's safe house, the remade cabin known as Lockwood Thicket, once owned by Rebecca's family. The Lockwoods. The light of a candle flickered in the room that Jacqueline's magic had recreated so permanently for she and Sebastian to have as a home. Sebastian lay there in the glow, uneasy in his mind. He worried for Evie and the baby. He worried for everything that happened with Mary and her baby. He pained for the future safe of all. The darkness that brightened or that benighted his family since the day he turned into the creature of the night that he was. Nothing was the same since his mortal death that thrust him into this ever walking nightmare of an existence, and he was suffering just as anyone else was. Penny for your thoughts, Jacqueline, as she sat in the darkness of the front room. Strasser turned quickly and extended his arm with the candle, allowing the light to glow in the illuminated room. Why are you sitting here in the darkness? He asked her. It helps me think. Sometimes light this distracts me from things. I should be thinking about sitting in the dark. Nothing around me is seen, and I can focus myself on meditation. I've been upset, she said. Sebastian's brow went up. About Mary, she said. Sebastian took a break and walked over to another chair, dark in the color and facing Jacqueline. He sat down and placed the candle on the table between them so the light was shared between them. She continued. She lost her baby the other day, and I feel terrible about it. She had an arrangement that we had an argument that got way out of hand. I'm afraid it got physical. I know, Sebastian replied coldly. Jacqueline was surprised he was and had remained so calm, knowing she had a hand in his cousin's horrible miscarriage. It's all my fault. I should have been there, and maybe it wouldn't have happened. I should have been there and kept the two of you calm, and I wasn't. Add it to my list of sins, Sebastian said. Oh, Sebastian, no, it wasn't, Jacqueline said, rushing over to him and falling to her knees. She placed her head on his lap and hugged his knees tightly with her arms, embracing him. You didn't do this, it was me. Everything falls to me, Jacqueline. Sure, listen to me, she began. I never want to think of that. You did nothing wrong. I did. I was the one who told Philip and Mary that I would keep the secret about Gabriel from you. I was the one who went over there and had that horrible fight with Mary. It was me. Please blame me, she said. He took a deep breath, caressed her back. The two of them, souls with nowhere to go, lost in the fog of a dark world that didn't understand them and perhaps never would. A world where the chaos of their existence was a deep raving of sadness and regret, and most of all, loss that came in the very moment they changed from their mortal selves, their supernatural incarnations, the witch and the vampire brought together to help others, but not burning the world that blows them to the ground, whether they're trying to or not. I have to tell you something, she said. I lifted her He lifted her chin with his three remaining fingers so that he looked up at him with their eyes met. He wanted to see her face. He wanted to sense her emotion. She spoke. I befriended Evie, she said. Sebastian looked. I want to be there for her. I want to be friends with her and make sure she's safe for you, for your child, and with her. And maybe someday we can all be friends together. I think this is the first step, she said, clouding her words with half truths. First step to what exactly? He asked. Well, to do everything between you and to being healed, and that's we can move on, she said. It was a strange conversation. He hadn't thought about healing with Evie. How could he? Elias had gone in such drastic different directions, and Evie had moved on with Matthew, and he had with Jacqueline. Their common connection was their son, whom they both loved. Sebastian's antenna went up. He could sense her holding back something from him. Truth, he could tell, that was attempting to gloss over the her true feelings for Evie, her jealousy, her contempt for the fact that Evie told her she would have always cared for Sebastian. Jacqueline wanted to truly like Evie, but the fear of losing Sebastian, the first person she had opened up to in so many years, made her want to keep them apart forever. I'm happy that you've been so caring toward her, but I think that maybe you should give her time. She's going to have to deal with our son as he grows and learns more about his hearing loss, Sebastian said, using the airball as an excuse for Jacqueline to say, "Wait, no, no, I wouldn't even try to take them away from your son and his mother," Jacqueline said quickly, sitting up from the ground. "I want to help her. After all, I'm partly responsible for it. Mary, of the course, too," she reminded them. Didn't you tell me you'd become friends with Evie? Why didn't you tell me you become friends with Evie? Jacqueline paused. I wanted to be sure when I told you that it came out at the right time. I don't want you to think badly about me and her together. We've bonded, she said. Bonded? Over art. We both love art so much, and in a way, and our love for sure, she cares for you. Still very much, Jacqueline replied, seeing a window to open the conversation to see how he feels about Evie. Sebastian got up from the chair and went over to the open window. The cold winter wind blew through the canopy of pine trees and over the evergreens. They made up the Terramore forest. He wished he could know how Evie truly felt, but in his heart he knew it was over. It had to be over. They knew they now loved in two different universes, and he wanted to keep his son safe. She's a wonderful person. I want her to be safe. I would be very, very, very upset if something happened to her, Jacqueline, he said, making his warning to her. Of course, she's the mother of your child, and she cares for you. Still, Jacqueline repeated, do you still care for her in that way? Tress turned to Jacqueline. She's the mother of my child. I will always care for her. But I've moved on to you, he replied as he moved closer. Jacqueline placed some her behind her ear, revealing more of her beautiful face. He lowered his hand and tilted her face up and kissed her deeply on the lips. He kissed to show his devotion to her, a kiss to squall her constant question about how he felt for someone who wasn't Jacqueline, a kiss in hopes she wouldn't do anything drastic. The open window let in more of the cold winter air. The small candle on the table felt of the frozen breeze as best it could, and the flame went out. Sebastian and Jacqueline continued to kiss with the flick of her wrist. Jacqueline lit a raging fire on the earth, revealing that Sebastian was taking off her clothes and she had taken off his. The two began to make love, the warming of the room, but the window remained open. As the two troubled lovers became locked in their love, making the wolves in the terrible forest howled in the distance, alarming Sebastian to the point he pulled away from the deep, passionate kiss he was locked in. Was it Jack asked? Wolves? What wolves? She lifted herself up slightly from her laid back position on the thick animal skin carpet and strained her to her what he did. She couldn't hear anything but the wind, their howling like I've never heard before. Sebastian said, I don't hear them, she answered. He said, placing war- his warm fingers on her lips. They were indeed howling over the wind that continued to cross the Atlantic and over the small islands of the Frenchman's Bay. They called out to their own species in the hidden thickets of their darkest forest, and they howled to all, sending message to the creature that lurked in the darkness that their time was coming. Sebastian lay on the floor, nude in the middle of the passionate moment. Suddenly realized that the moment the wolves were howling was not directed at him, but perhaps someone he needed to pay attention to and be wary of. Someone who didn't hear the howls over the wind. Someone who lay just as nude in the front warm magical fire in the heart of Lockwood Thicket was Sebastian Lord, Jacqueline. Later that night, as the moon became engulfed in the clouds, Later that night, as the moon became engulfed in the clouds of the night, and the stars became lost to the mists of the sea, Fatima Braga read by the heart of her cottage above her parlor, where she read tarot cards and palms for wealthy passerbys and superstitious locals who had their own mysterious ghosts to chase. In a thick black robe and her white hair tied up tightly to the back of her head, she sipped a tea that was dark in tone, with light drops of a fragrant oil that filled the air in a small room. Page by page of her book, Fatima read as the clock struck 10 p.m. A knock came upon to her apartment door. Not expecting it, when she lifted a brow and wondered who in the world would visit her so late at night. She never took late night appointments, even in the direct circumstances which, for someone in search of her spiritual answers, was often times was dire, but Fatima's rules were ironclad. She quietly closed her book and placed it on the side table. Had had a small Bible bound in black leather already there facing up. She touched this sacred book as if it were protecting her on the way to the door. Fatima placed both hands on the door and pushed her ear up against the cold. Who's there? Philip. Fatima almost jumped out of her skin. Her nephew Philip hadn't commenced with her in years, and after their role in the streets the other day, she thought for sure she'd never see him again, but because of the shadow that she sensed around him, she of course would never keep him at bay, especially if he had come to see her. She quickly unlatched the locks on her door and swung it open to see her dear nephew standing in the dark coat, his skin a golden tan with a hint of the rose, his cheeks, his lips filled and pink, slightly chapped from the winter frost. Fia, Phila, she used using the Portuguese word for son. Come in, come in. He stood there for a bit, thinking to himself of all the terrible things he had always known of his aunt, and feeling foolish for being there in the first place, but walked in. Is everything okay? I'm very surprised to see you. Please sit. Would you like some tea? Something to eat? What can I do? She asked, doing everything she could to welcome him. No, I don't need anything. I won't be here long, he answered coldly. What is it? Tia Fatima, I don't know why you've crossed my path again. It's been years since we both lived on this tiny island and never once saw each other. I can only imagine there's some kind of reason, something from the universe telling me to see you, to speak to you. I don't know, but I want to know that my family needs you to stay away, Philip instructed. Fatima took a breath, exhaling all of her anxieties and hopes that he'd come to reconcile, but it was more of the same exile. Well, at least it's good to know you still believe in the messages from the universe. If that's so, then you must listen to what it's being told to you. She answered as she spun her chair around from the fire and sat facing him, standing. I don't know it's it's saying, he confessed, but it doesn't matter. When I was 15 and my father lay dying in his bed, he told me to never allow you to near me or the family I create. I was successful for years in keeping that promise, and now when I come into town every time I turn my back, there you are lurking around some shadow street corner. Leave me be. Leave Mary be. So you choose to ignore the signs the universe is telling you to see me standing there in those shadowy corner streets, and you've chosen to ignore because Philip, yes, you may have night seen me all these years. May I have seen you. I've watched you grow up from afar into the man you are, and you never once noticed me, she said, her eyes narrowed. Oh, yes, I was there when you got hurt by Jacob Ward in the car accident and injured your hand. I went to the hospital many times and watched from the hallways as you got better. I saw you and that beautiful young woman, Celeste. When you were in love with her, I saw that love blossom. So watched as it withered. I saw you once in the middle of the night come from the terrible mansion drunk, crying, broken. I've always been by your side, like a ghost, a phantom of your family's past, because I love you, and I love your father, my dear brother Camillo. Despite his anger toward me, Fatima explained, Philip couldn't respond. His heart was opening to his aunt, a woman he was told to stay away from because something horrible that had happened decades ago when he loved when she lived in Lisbon as a nun. Camillo, Philip's father, was so angry at Fatima for her betrayal that he swore her never to see the family again. The shame was so great. Why do you persist so much? Why can't you just leave me alone? Philip asked, his eyes filling with water, torn between wanting to have his family reunited and also wanting to keep his promise to his father intact. Why do you think? The mystical Fatima wondered. This is torture. I've lost so much. First, I lost my mother, my father, to early deaths, and then my best friend Sebastian, then Celeste, then the child I was going to have with Mary. I don't want to lose any more. There you are in my world again, and I can't accept you. Philip said, his broken heart pouring out to his aunt so quickly, got up from her chair and reached for him, but he flinched. Helen was struck by the news of Mary's baby. The pain, it was all showing on his face, understandably, but she was struck and touched to see how tormented he was, as she knew Philip to be a much strong soul. He was like iron when his mother died, when he was a child, brave and calm, in his face of much pain. When his father died much later in his life, Philip again showed poise and strength in a world that was taking caught shreds of his identity away from him bit by bit. But the loss of the baby broke him. Philip, I am here. I have always been here. I will never go. God will have to take my life before I go, she answered. But why? Why do you haunt me? Philip screamed, and he fell into her arms, sobbing. She held him in her arms like a mother to a child. He crumbled into a million pieces. Her heart stolen by his sadness, she loved him like he was her son. She had no children of her own. Philip's mother died when he was just a baby. She raised him until Camilla and Philip left Lisbon for America when he was 9 years old. And from then she'd see him every 4 months when she'd come by steamship for the summer until the scandal. When a nun in Lisbon Okay. When a nun in Lisbon, Fatima, then known as Sister Inez, Bada broke a sacred vow and fell in love with the local priest. The scandal destroyed her reputation, and the priest, embarrassed by it all, took his own life, leaving Fatima to bear the brunt of the shock to the devout Catholic world she lived in. She was removed from her own vows to her brother Camillo in America, who banished her. Philip never knew why his aunt, who now lived close, could never be spoken to. I just want things to be back to normal, Philip said, still sobbing. Look at me. Come, look at me, she said, lifting his sobbing face from the shoulder. What is normal? Who is normal? None is fail. No one is. Your life is where it is because the universe believes it is safe there in your hands. Your child's death was an accident, Adam answered, not knowing the full truth of the situation. Philip pulled away in anger when remembering his baby's death and who did it. He walked over to the earth and looked into the fire. His eyes, a light brown chestnut, reflected the flames as they buried not hot under a black smoke cloak. We've been given a second chance, Philip replied, now free of his tears. Yes, the other child, Fallon replied. I don't know if that is the best thing for you, Theo, she added. Why? Maybe the both of you need time to take up for yourselves and maybe have another baby when the time is right. No, no. This is what we want. We want to take care of this newborn baby and help him. He deserves that. He lost his mother and has no father. We are a lost mother and father who are missing a piece of our puzzle. It's a perfect fit, Philip replied. Fatima no, shook her head. No, 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 it's not for you. Not this baby. Give him back to Dr. Hoffman, Fatima warned. Philip turned from the fire and furrowed his brow. He quickly realized coming to see her was a mistake. He only came all the way to see her or leave his family alone, and she was pretending they were close and that her opinion mattered him. Don't don't do that. My God, I don't even know why I told you anything. I came here to tell you to leave us alone, and that's where I'll end it. Here and now. Do not come near us. Not me, not Mary, not the baby boy we've adopted, Philip revealed. Adopted? Yes, no matter what you think, Mary and I have decided to take in the baby. He's our son now. Is that clear? He shouted. Your son, Fatima asked, hearing the words, but for some reason that sounded so off to her, so wrong, so inappropriate, coming from his mouth for some reason. Her senses were telling her that all it was going to end terribly. That the baby they were taking about, the sudden orphan baby boy, was not what they thought he was. Your son, she repeated. When she said the word son again, off in the center of the adjoining living room, a table, deep blue tablecloth and clear crystal ball sat. The ball, a perfect sphere of glass, began to glow. The white was a crystal began to radiate the bright. It lit the entire upstairs portion of the fortune teller's apartment above her parlor and began to levitate and come to the main room where Philip and Fatima were standing. A levitating crystal ball was transfixing in its orbital glow. White light with fractals of yellow sparkled around like miniature spun in midair. Fatima crossed herself and it fell to her knees. She began to pray at the miracles version of the ball. spinning in the bright light, and clear sign of her she was right about to worry about the new baby boy becoming a member of her family. See the ball. It's telling us, it's telling me I am right, Fatima said on her knees in prayer mode. Philip snickered at her, took a step forward, and grabbed the ball of glass floating in the center of the room and hurled it across the other side, where it bashed up against the wall, where it shattered to thousands of pieces all over the floor. Enough, Philip screamed. Fatima in shock stood up, angry. How dare you? I want nothing to do with your magic. I've had enough sorcery to fill many lifetimes, and it's brought me nothing but heartache. I will tell you once last time. I'm here on the Welshport tonight to pick up the papers from Hoffman and sign them. The child will be safe, will be ours, and he'll be loved, no matter what you think, say, or do. Are we clear? Philip demanded. Fenna put her hands around her body and squeezed as it was to hug herself like a child berated by a parent. He didn't understand her. She knew that for some reason he never would understand her, and it wasn't for a lack of belief in the supernatural. After all, Mary and Eliza Good had shown him that truth. But for Philip, those supernatural powers that he could not understand, that he could not explain, and now be taken too many things for him lashing out at Fatima, a woman he was used to giving his ear to, even if it were in silence, was easier than to pour it all out on poor Mary. Fatima was Philip's figuratively punching bag, an easy mark to push out of all the anger he was bottling up for many years. Fatima tried to speak. I want you to know that it was. No, I said enough. Just tell me that we're done. You and I, as family. No more, he said. I don't want that, Fatima said quickly. It's not about what you want, it's about what is reality. We're no longer family. My father made me promise to stay away, Fatima. Philip finally, as he went to the door to leave. Philip, wait, Fatima said as he turned back to her, to the doorknob in his hand. I will love you, nephew, for all my life, and I will never stop, no matter what you think of me or what your father believed. I did. No amount of shame thrown at me will ever take that love away from my family. I want you to know that I would hope the same would go for you. People in the world are imperfect, Phil. Phil. You cannot wait. You cannot want for them to be either, because nature itself is imperfect. To be perfect is to be divine, and no one on this earth is divine, Fatima said. Philip stared at her as she spoke. The words seeped into his mind like water to a sponge. He began to tear up again, his warm eyes once more filled with the path of decades of family turmoil and loneliness. There standing before him, the woman he was supposed to shun, the woman he came to reminded she would be shunned, but her words took control of his heart, and he went to her and hugged her again. She accepted his hug. She held him back, and without saying anything, he dashed out of the small upstairs apartment and vanished into the night, back to Good Island. Fatima stood in the room, her night slippers crunching on the broken glass all over the floor from her crystal ball. The shards of glass began to glow, hundreds of little bits of glass, all glowing the bright white light she had seen when it was still in orb form. Then the pieces quickly all came together to form the ball again, shocking Fatima, standing still in her apartment. The universe was telling her again to form of the ball, coming back together. Familiar reconciliation could be a minute after the shattering, but the danger was still there, lurking, watching. Story is really, 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 really good. I'll give a prediction later. Guys, link is going to be in the description box for TV Night and Beguile. Go check it out.